Imagine for a moment that you find yourself stranded alone on an unknown planet. A planet where bizarre creatures are stalking you, determined to take your life. This is exactly what happens in this movie. So let's dive in the story. The tale begins aboard a mining spaceship called Bolus. A group of laborers were making the long journey, lying in their cryopods. Suddenly, while the ship was cruising through space on its cryoprobe course, an asteroid abruptly altered its trajectory and hurtled rapidly toward Boras. In mere moments, the asteroid collided with the Borali spaceship, and in the ensuing emergency, the cryopods separated from the ship on their own. At that moment, the ship's AI system, named Leonard, awakened the workers so they could be prepared for the imminent dangers. As soon as the asteroid struck, one laborer named Andy woke up. Leonard told him to remain calm and then secured him for safety. Within moments of detachment from the ship, Andy's cryopod began drifting toward a nearby planet. As all the cryopods entered this new planet's atmosphere, several suddenly burst into flames, incinerating their occupants to ash. Andy's pod, however, escaped the fire, but its landing speed was extremely high. Soon, it was about to crash into a hillside when miraculously, the pod spun around and propelled itself forward, resulting in a crash landing that nonetheless saved Andy's life. Andy lost consciousness. Then, in a sudden moment, he caught a glimpse of his family. Startled, he sat up and looked around. He was stranded in a hilly region under thick, dark clouds. Desperate, Andy tried to speak with the ship's AI system, but no response came. Suddenly, the ground began to tremble. Leonard advised him to exit the pod immediately. There was just one problem. Andy couldn't open the pod. Frantically, he rummaged through his survival kit, only to find that even a flare gun was missing. After all, Andy was just a low-ranking laborer. Finally, using a fire extinguisher, he managed to break a window on the pod and attempted to escape. But as the ground quaked, the pod tilted, and jagged shards of glass tore through Andy's suit. Leonard warned him that without his suit, he wouldn't survive long on this planet. Quickly, Andy used a special spray to mend his suit. Just then, Leonard informed him that the pod was on fire. Without hesitation, Andy scrambled out of the pod, and he made sure not to forget his son's last toy. Now, he stood alone on an unknown planet. Then, he noticed a burning Boras ship entering the planet's atmosphere. The moment the ship crashed, a tremendous explosion occurred. The blast generated such enormous energy that Andy was thrown far away, but fortunately, he survived. After regaining his senses, Andy asked Leonard where he was. Leonard explained that he was on an unknown planet about which little was known to humans, and that their ship had failed to reach its true destination. Suddenly, from afar, a light appeared. Drawn toward it, Andy encountered debris from Boras along the way. His eyes then fell on another pod. Hoping to extend his survival, he tried to extract an oxygen tank from it, but unexpectedly, a dead body tumbled out, sending a jolt of terror through him. Gathering his courage, he managed to retrieve the oxygen tank, though it was nearly depleted. Distressed, he resumed his trek toward the light. Shortly afterward, he noticed claw marks on that pod, evidence that a ferocious animal had been there. This meant he was not entirely alone on this planet. When Andy finally reached the source of the light, he met another laborer named Dwayne. Dwayne was overjoyed to see Andy. During their conversation, Andy learned that they had little food and water, and Dwayne explained that his company had chosen a shortcut to save money, a shortcut riddled with asteroids that ultimately caused the ship to crash. Working in the communications department, Dwayne was now sending signals to Earth, hoping a rescue ship would be dispatched. He informed Andy that even if the fastest rescue ship were sent, the signal would take 8 months to reach Earth, and it might take at least 2 years for help to arrive. In the meantime, Dwayne suggested that they head south to search for the second pile of Boros debris, where they might sustain themselves until rescue came. Overwhelmed by despair, Andy almost lost his resolve. But gradually, Dwayne encouraged him. Then suddenly, as Andy moved, his leg accidentally snagged on something, dislodging a wire from Dwayne's system. As Andy turned to help reconnect it, a ferocious creature appeared in an instant, snatching Dwayne away before Andy could even sense its presence. Shocked and confused about Dwayne's fate, Andy sent a distress signal back to Earth. Then, he picked up Dwayne's dropped weapon and set off alone to search for the second fragment of Boros debris. Soon, his oxygen tank began to run dangerously low, yet he pressed on. Abruptly, a new voice crackled over his radio, a girl named Naomi. She told Andy that her legs were trapped beneath her pod and transmitted her location. Leonard warned Andy that the area Naomi was in was extremely dangerous, with very little visibility, and that by the time he reached her, his oxygen would be nearly exhausted. Leonard advised him to make it to the surviving part of their ship so he could refill his oxygen tank. But then Naomi pleaded for help, explaining that her pod still contained oxygen for both of them. Overcome by her plight, Andy couldn't resist, and he agreed to help her, thinking, "Who can say no when there's no oxygen and life is on the line?" Soon, Andy moved toward Naomi's location, and the two began to converse. Hours later, night fell, and Andy started feeling as though something was moving in the darkness. He asked Leonard to scan the area. However, Leonard was an outdated AI model the company had kept to save money, and he couldn't perform the scan properly. An hour later, as Andy continued walking, he again sensed a presence in the darkness. He told Naomi about Dwayne's disappearance and wondered what had happened to him. Then, his eyes caught sight of strange footprints. Following them, he reached an opening encircled by spider webs. Alarmed, he immediately informed Naomi that there might be alien spiders on this planet. Realizing the imminent danger, Andy quickened his pace as he encountered more of these spidery nets along the way. Then Naomi asked him, "Why did you agree to this hazardous work?" Hearing her question, Andy recalled bittersweet memories of the joyful days he had spent with his wife and son before they left him. He confided in Naomi that his wife and son had abandoned him. At that moment, he suddenly heard a guttural growl. Fear gripped him as he looked around. Leonard then warned him that numerous trackers were present nearby, and astonishingly, these trackers belonged to his companions who had long since perished. As he neared the trackers, Andy fired his flare gun so its light would illuminate the area. In that brief blaze, Andy saw a gigantic spider. Its massive, stinger-like appendage dropped down in front of him. Somehow, despite falling from such a height, Andy survived. The spider let out a fierce roar from above, but did not leap down to attack him. Andy quickly reported the sighting of these spiders to Naomi. In fact, the trackers he saw were the remains of his companions, devoured by these creatures, their signals now emanating from their bellies. Soon, Andy noticed that oxygen was leaking rapidly from his suit. He managed to stop the leak with a quick spray. Suddenly, a faint voice came over the radio. Dwayne's voice, weak and halting. Dwayne told Andy and Naomi that he was fending off the dangerous spiders. Naomi then urged Andy to go help Dwayne, but after sliding down the hill, Andy's GPS malfunctioned. Naomi guided him via radio to reach Dwayne. Finally, Andy arrived at Dwayne's location, but by then Dwayne was surrounded by spiders. Dwayne shouted that he had a plan, but before he could act, a spider attacked him, viciously mauling him. Andy immediately ducked behind a pod as another spider, attracted by his scent, advanced on him. Seizing the moment, Naomi switched on the light of a nearby pod to distract it. Taking advantage of the chaos, Andy hid in another pod, but even there, a corpse lay rotting. Andy then asked Naomi to turn off the light on her pod, but Naomi, distracted, ended up activating the lights on all the pods at once. this brilliant burst of light attracted the spiders toward the pods. Andy tried to flee, but one spider followed him relentlessly until he finally reached a dim area. Desperate, Andy urged Naomi to come out of her pod as quickly as possible, but Naomi remained trapped. Growing increasingly anxious, Naomi's worry spurred Andy to sing a tender song, a song he often sang in happier times with his family. Moved by his words, Naomi admitted that Dwayne was dead, and that now only the two of them remained alive on this planet. As Andy emerged from the foggy area, he wondered why the spiders had suddenly abandoned him. Just then, a stunning herd of purple fireflies appeared before him. For a brief moment, he stood still in awe, but then all the fireflies turned red with anger and attacked him. Andy barely managed to escape with his life. Shortly afterward, Naomi remarked that perhaps the spiders were frightened by the fireflies, which is why they ceased their pursuit. Before Andy could reply, a massive creature's roar erupted from the ground. A huge animal's mouth burst forth, and in one swift motion, it swallowed Andy whole. In that horrifying instant, memories of his family flashed before his eyes. Inside the creature's belly, Andy pleaded for help from Leonard. Looking at the creature's insides, he felt as if he were suffering a heart attack. Then Leonard released a poisonous gas from Andy's suit, causing the creature's stomach to burn from within. The creature immediately vomited, expelling Andy. Stumbling forward, Andy fell into a cave-like area completely teeming with fireflies. Almost immediately, the fireflies attacked him, but after his hasty retreat, they ceased pursuit. With his suit's oxygen now nearly depleted, Andy decided not to head to the other part of the ship, but instead moved toward Naomi. Finally, when he reached Naomi, his oxygen ran out. Quick to act, Naomi immediately provided him oxygen from her tank. Andy then attempted to free Naomi, whose legs were trapped, but his strength was nearly gone. Using some tools, he managed to free her, and the two hurriedly exited the pod. Once outside, Andy tied a piece of iron to Naomi's leg to help her walk. Together, they gathered supplies from Naomi's pod. Grateful, Naomi thanked him for saving her instead of returning to the ship. Moments later, a swarm of spiders appeared, prompting both of them to take cover. After a short, frantic run, they fell, but then another spider prepared to attack. In response, Naomi fired her flare gun at it, causing the ferocious spider to retreat toward the flare gun. Seizing the opportunity, the two escaped to the second section of Boras. However, Naomi then found that a door would not close because the control system had malfunctioned. After many attempts, she finally managed to shut the door, during which a spider was sliced and killed. Soon, a horde of spiders began battering the door with full force, forcing Andy and Naomi to retreat to the inner parts of the ship, where emergency lights were still on, indicating that the backup generator was still functioning. Knowing all the ship's corridors, Naomi forged ahead, while Andy, less familiar with the layout, followed close behind. Before long, they discovered a cabin that contained oxygen and all the supplies they needed. Suddenly, blood began to stream, and they realized that a spider had infiltrated the Boras ship. They quickly hid, and watched as the spider covered its eggs with a web and even placed a corpse beside them as a food source. Terrified, Andy shuddered. The spider, unaware of their presence, slipped away. As soon as Naomi and Andy emerged, another spider attacked from behind. Andy grabbed Naomi and ducked into a room, locking the door behind them. Convinced they were now safe, Naomi tried to reassure him, but Andy grew furious and began pounding the door with a metal rod. It was useless, however, as the room still contained oxygen. They removed their helmets and sat down to talk. Andy showed Naomi a video of his wife and son, explaining that they had been returning from his birthday party when a terrible accident occurred, an accident in which his wife and child perished, though somehow he survived. Overwhelmed by grief, Andy murmured that his life now felt meaningless. Naomi consoled him, saying, "You saved my life. Perhaps that is why you must live." Naomi admitted that she had lost trust in people, but seeing Andy revived her hope. Embracing him, she reassured him. In that moment, she noticed fireflies stuck to Andy's suit. Suddenly, a spider crashed through the door and entered the room. Instantly, Naomi grabbed a cluster of fireflies and hurled them at the spider, forcing it to retreat. Seizing the opportunity, Andy and Naomi fled, but they tumbled into a cargo pit. As they struggled to escape, a spider sprinted toward them at full speed, and they fell together. The spider launched another assault, so Andy sprayed Naomi with a repellent. The spray made the spider chew on it, and it exploded, leaving it momentarily stunned. Seeing this, both Naomi and Andy fled. Then, Andy devised a plan to crush the spider under a pod. He asked Naomi to distract the spider while he searched for another pod. Leonard then informed him that a pod was currently located 2 floors above. With great effort, Andy climbed up to the pod while the spider attacked Naomi. To help her, Andy switched off all the lights, allowing Naomi to evade the spider's assault. Shortly afterward, Naomi found some emergency lights. She turned them on, diverting the spider's attention. Meanwhile, Andy attempted to operate the pod without the ship's systems. Leonard warned him that doing so would cause a short circuit in his AI system, meaning Leonard would be permanently shut down and could no longer help them. Furthermore, with all the falling and chaos, Andy's chances of survival were slim. Despite knowing all this, Andy risked his life and managed to lower the pod directly onto the spider. In that very moment, Andy witnessed an accident in which his family perished. The impact crushed the spider beneath, and Andy was knocked unconscious from the fall. Moments later, Naomi rushed to his side, sobbing uncontrollably as she feared Andy was dead. But within a few moments, Andy regained consciousness, and Naomi embraced him tightly. At that instant, the first ray of the sun broke through, and they both realized that although terrifying creatures roamed this planet, the view was breathtakingly beautiful. At that moment, the voice of Andy's AI assistant Leonard rang out once again. Leonard announced that he had updated himself and, seizing the moment, played a romantic song for Andy and Naomi. Hand in hand, they looked toward the future. On this unknown planet, with no one but each other, and with no rescue coming for at least the next 2 years, could they possibly survive? What do you think? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this explanation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more deep dives into your favorite movies. See you in the next video. Bye.